The massive space station hung in the void like a metal mountain. Its name was Nexus Prime, and it served as the center of power for the entire galaxy. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from 47 different alien species gathered for an emergency meeting. The air buzzed with tension and the sound of countless alien languages being translated through universal communicators. Admiral Kang Wu walked through the corridors with steady steps. His gray uniform was simple compared to the colorful robes and exotic armor worn by the alien delegates. Behind him walked Dr. Park Hana, Earth's top diplomat. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her dark eyes showed no fear despite the hostile glares from passing aliens. The two humans made their way to the main assembly chamber. The room was enormous, with seats arranged in a perfect circle around a central platform. Each seat was designed for a different species. Some aliens needed water tanks, others required special gravity fields, and a few floated in energy bubbles. The diversity was incredible, but the mood was united in one thing: anger toward humanity. Kang Wu stepped onto the central platform. The chamber fell silent. Thousands of eyes, some human-like, others completely alien, focused on him. At the highest seat sat Veltar, the council leader. He was a being made of living crystal, his body reflecting the chamber's lights in rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice rang like breaking glass. "Admiral Kang Wu of the human species," Veltar announced. "You stand before the Galactic Council to hear our judgment. For 200 years, your kind has spread across the stars. You have claimed systems without permission. You have built fleets without approval. You have acted as if you belong among the civilized races." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. An alien that looked like a giant spider clicked its mandibles in what might have been laughter. Another being, covered in scales and breathing fire, roared its approval. Veltar continued. "The Council has decided. Humanity will surrender all military vessels. You will accept our guidance and protection. You will learn your place in the natural order. You have 30 standard days to comply." The chamber erupted in cheers and applause from the alien delegates. They expected the humans to beg, to negotiate, to show the fear that all younger species displayed when faced with the Council's power. Instead, Kang Wu smiled. "The Earth government has considered your demands," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the noise. "Our answer is no." The chamber fell silent again, but this time the silence felt dangerous. Councillor Theksan, leader of the warrior species called the Brutal, stood up. He was 3 meters tall, covered in black fur, with arms like tree trunks and claws that could tear through metal. "Did this tiny creature just refuse us?" Theksan asked, his voice like grinding stone. "These hairless apes think they can stand against races that conquered the stars while their ancestors were eating insects?" Laughter echoed through the chamber. The aliens found it amusing that humans would dare to refuse. They had seen this before. Young species always tried to act brave at first. Then the Council's fleets would arrive and reality would set in. Dr. Park Hana stepped forward. Her voice was calm and steady. "You make the same mistake that many have made before you. You see our young age in space and think we are weak. You see our small territory and think we are limited. You see our peaceful nature and think we are helpless." She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled aliens. "This is an error in judgment, and it will be the last error you ever make." The threat was clear, but the aliens only laughed harder. Veltar's crystal body chimed like wind chimes as he shook with amusement. "Your species controls 47 star systems," he said. "The Council commands over 10,000 systems. Your fleet has 8,000 ships. Our combined forces number over 2 million vessels. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are weak. What could you possibly do to threaten us?" Kang Wu reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. It looked like a simple communication unit, but when he activated it, every screen in the chamber flickered. For just a moment, the aliens saw something that made no sense. The device was somehow connected to systems that shouldn't exist, networks that spanned distances impossible to cross. "Vote," Kang Wu said simply. "Make your choice, but understand that you are not deciding whether to attack humanity. You are deciding whether humanity will continue to protect you." The aliens didn't understand what he meant, but they didn't care. The vote was quick and unanimous. The Galactic Council declared war on humanity. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Veltar called out, "Admiral, your bravery is foolish but admirable. When your fleet is destroyed and your worlds are burning, remember that we offered you mercy. Kang-Wu turned back with that same calm smile. When this is over, Counselor, you will understand what mercy really looks like, and you will be grateful that humanity chooses to show it. The humans left the chamber through corridors filled with jeering aliens. Some threw objects, others made threatening gestures. A few species had already begun planning which human worlds they would claim after the conquest. Once they were alone on their shuttle, Dr. Park Hana activated a secure communication channel. The message she sent was brief but would change everything. Sol Command, this is Hana. The Council has made their choice. Operation Darkfall is authorized. Repeat, Darkfall is authorized. The response came immediately from General Li Kyung on Earth. Understood. All stations have been notified. The children want to play with fire. Time to show them what real heat feels like. As their shuttle departed Nexus Prime, Kang-Wu looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council's fleets were already beginning to move. Millions of ships filled with alien warriors who thought they were about to crush a weak young species. They had no idea that humanity had been waiting for this moment for 50,000 years. They didn't know that every star system they thought was empty actually held sleeping giants. They couldn't imagine that the primitive humans they mocked had technologies that could rewrite the laws of physics. The Council thought they were about to teach humanity a lesson about power. Instead, they were about to learn why apex predators sometimes choose to hide among their prey. The war was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks had passed since the Council declared war on humanity. Across the galaxy, alien fleets gathered like storm clouds. The largest concentration of ships assembled near the Rigel system, just 10 light-years from Earth's solar system. Fleet Commander Yin Taik stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as more ships arrived every hour. Yin Taik belonged to a species called the Hegemony. They looked somewhat like humans but were taller, with pale blue skin and silver eyes. They had been part of the Council for over 1,000 years, and considered themselves experts on warfare. As he studied the tactical displays, Yin Taik felt confident about the coming battle. Report, he ordered his aide. A younger hegemony officer named Bok Cheol. Sir, we now have 50,000 ships in our advance fleet, Bok Cheol said. The humans have pulled most of their forces back to defend Earth. Our scouts count only 2,000 human vessels in the Sol system. Yin Taik nodded. The numbers made sense. When faced with overwhelming force, most species would gather their ships around their homeworld for a final desperate defense. It was logical, but ultimately useless. What about their technology? Yin Taik asked. Primitive energy weapons, basic shields, simple metal hulls, came the report. Their ships are large but slow. Our weapons will cut through them like plasma through ice. On a dozen other viewing screens, Yin Taik could see the rest of the Council's forces. Ship after ship stretched into the distance. Brutal warships that looked like flying fortresses, ethereal vessels that seemed to be made of pure light. Ancient dreadnoughts from species so old their names were forgotten. The combined firepower could destroy entire star systems. It seems almost unfair, Yin Taik said to his aide. Perhaps we should offer them surrender terms after we destroy half their fleet. Total extinction seems excessive for such a young species. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city of Sol on Earth, General Li Kyung walked through corridors that didn't officially exist. The bunker was carved from solid rock 3 kilometers underground. It had been built in secret over 50 years ago, when humanity first learned they were not alone in the universe. Li Kyung entered the main command center. The room was filled with screens and control panels that would have looked like magic to any alien observer. Chief Engineer Choi Mina looked up from her workstation as he approached. Status report, Li Kyung said. All Darkfall arrays are online and ready, Choi Mina replied. The enemy fleets have no idea what they're flying into. The Darkfall arrays were humanity's greatest secret. To any outside observer, they looked like simple communication relays or mining platforms. The Council's scouts had passed by dozens of them without a second glance. Hidden throughout human space, each array was actually a weapon that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. How long until the enemy reaches firing range? Li Kyung asked. 14 hours, came the answer from another technician. Their advance fleet will drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system right on schedule. Li Kyung smiled grimly. The Council thought they were clever, using their massive numbers to overwhelm human defenses. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for decades. Across human space, other preparations were underway. Captain Han Jisoo stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the Soul's Fire. The ship looked like any other human vessel from the outside, a long metal hull with simple weapons and basic armor. But appearances could be deceiving. Final system checks. Han Jisoo ordered her crew. Dark matter manipulation. Systems online, reported her weapons. Officer, dimensional cloaking field ready, said the navigation. Officer, quantum disruption torpedoes loaded, confirmed the tactical officer. These were not the primitive weapons the aliens expected. Humanity had learned to harness forces that most species couldn't even detect. While the Council relied on energy shields and conventional armor, humans had developed something far more advanced. The Soul's Fire was one of 500 ships hidden throughout the Sol system. Each vessel carried technology that violated what the aliens thought were the laws of physics. They could bend space, manipulate time, and phase in and out of normal reality. On the bridge of his flagship in the Rigel system, Yin Taik received final intelligence reports about human defenses. The information painted exactly the picture he expected. A small, desperate fleet gathered around Earth for a hopeless last stand. Sir, Bok Cheol said, long-range sensors detect human ships moving into defensive positions around their homeworld. It appears they're planning to fight. Of course they are, Yin Taik replied. They have nowhere else to run. Begin final preparations for the jump to Sol. We'll end this quickly and move on to occupying their colonies. What the alien scouts didn't see were the hundreds of human ships hiding in perfect stealth throughout the solar system. Their sensors couldn't detect the massive installations built into asteroids and moons. They had no idea that Earth itself was not what it appeared to be. Back in the underground bunker, Dr. Park Hana arrived to oversee the final preparations. She had returned from the failed negotiations, with a complete list of every Council fleet position and communication frequency. The aliens are about to learn the difference between appearing weak and being weak, she said to General Lee. Kyung, any word from our deep space assets? Lee Kyung asked. Admiral Park Junho reports all ghost fleets are in position, Hana replied. The moment the Council attacks Sol, our forces will begin operations across their entire territory. Ghost fleets. That was what humanity called the massive armadas they had secretly built and hidden in the empty space between galaxies. While the Council thought humans had only 8,000 ships, the real number was closer to 8 million. Most of those vessels were currently invisible, waiting in the dark between star systems. As the final hours ticked down, the aliens prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory. Their ships were loaded with weapons designed to destroy primitive human technology. Their troops were ready to occupy human worlds. Their politicians were already dividing up human territory. None of them suspected that they were about to face an enemy that had been preparing for this moment since before their civilizations learned to use fire. In just a few hours, the Council's advanced fleet would drop out of hyperspace and find the Sol system apparently defended by only a small human force. They would see what looked like an easy target and begin their attack. That would be their first mistake. Their last mistake would be assuming that humanity had shown them everything. The moment had arrived. 50,000 alien ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Fleet Commander Yin Taik stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display show human positions. Just as expected, about 2,000 human vessels waited in defensive formations around Earth. This will be over quickly, Yin Taik said to his aide. Signal all ships to advance. Target their largest vessels first. But as the alien fleet moved forward, something strange happened. Every communication system in their ship suddenly crackled to life. A human voice spoke clearly across all frequencies. It was Admiral Park Junho, commander of Earth's defense forces. Council fleets, the voice said calmly. You have entered Sol system with hostile intent. You came here expecting to find a weak enemy. Instead, you will learn what humanity really is. Darkfall Protocol is now active, Yin Taik frowned. What is Darkfall Protocol? He asked his intelligence officer. Unknown, sir. It's not in any of our files about human capabilities. That was when the stars began to change. Throughout the solar system, what the aliens had thought were simple communication relays suddenly came to life. Arrays of machinery that had been disguised as mining platforms revealed their true purpose. Energy began to build in patterns that made no sense to alien sensors. General Lee Kyung watched from his underground command center as decades of preparation finally activated. Chief Engineer Choi Mina's fingers moved across her control panels, coordinating systems that spanned multiple star systems. Darkfall arrays at full power, she reported. Reality disruption in 321 mark. Space itself seemed to scream. The alien ships suddenly found their sensors showing impossible readings. Their energy shields, which had protected them for thousands of years, simply stopped working. Not damaged, not overloaded, they just stopped existing in any meaningful way. What's happening? Yin-Taik shouted as his ship's defensive systems failed one by one. His science officer, a creature with tentacles instead of arms, worked frantically at his instruments. Sir, they're manipulating dark matter. They're using it to disrupt the quantum fields that power our shields. That's impossible, Yin-Taik said. Dark matter manipulation requires technology that takes millions of years to develop. But impossible or not, it was happening. Across the alien fleet, ship after ship found itself defenseless as humanity's true weapons came online. Captain Han Jisu smiled as her destroyer, the Soul's Fire, decloaked behind Jupiter's moon Io. Around her, hundreds of other human ships became visible as their stealth systems deactivated. These vessels looked nothing like the primitive ships the aliens expected. Their hulls were black as empty space, designed to absorb all forms of energy. Their weapons didn't fire energy bolts or missiles. They fired concentrated dark matter that could pass through any known defense. Target the alien command ships, Han Jisu ordered. Show them what real weapons look like. The Soul's Fire opened fire. Beams of pure darkness reached out across space and touched 3 alien dreadnoughts. The massive ships simply came apart, their hulls separating into component atoms as the dark matter disrupted every force holding them together. Across the alien fleet, panic spread like wildfire. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before were being destroyed by weapons they couldn't even understand. On Earth, Dr. Park Hana activated the planetary communication array. Her message was broadcast not just to the alien fleet in Sol system, but to every council world across the galaxy. People of the galaxy, her voice carried across space. You have been lied to. Your leaders told you that humanity was young and weak. They were wrong. We are not a species that recently discovered space travel. We are the children of beings that walked between galaxies before your oldest civilizations learned to make fire. The truth behind humanity's rapid expansion began to unfold. The sleeper ships that had discovered faster than light travel were actually ancient vessels returning from deep space missions. The human colonies that seemed to appear overnight had been established millennia ago. We allowed you to believe we were primitive, Hana continued, because we hoped you might be different from the others. We hoped you might choose cooperation over conquest. You have chosen poorly. In the Sol system, Admiral Park Junho's fleet had fully revealed itself. The 2,000 ships the aliens could see were joined by 500 more that had been hiding in perfect stealth. But that was still not the full truth. The real human fleet numbered in the millions of vessels, hidden in the space between stars and in dimensions the aliens didn't know existed. As the Darkfall Protocol reached full activation, these ships began to appear throughout Council space. Fleet Commander Yin-Taik watched in horror as his magnificent armada dissolved around him. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being cut apart like toys. His communications officer was screaming reports from across the galaxy. Sir, human fleets are appearing everywhere. They're attacking Kepler Station. They're hitting our supply bases. How do they have so many ships? The answer came from General Lee Kyung as his message reached every alien commander simultaneously. The galaxy has been under human protection for 50,000 years. You thought Earth was our homeworld. Earth is our fortress. You thought this was our first war. We have been fighting battles in the dark while you played at civilization. As if to prove his point, space around the alien fleet began to warp and twist. Human ships that had been hidden in folded dimensions started to emerge. These vessels were massive, each one larger than the alien flagship. Their weapons could crack planets. Captain Han Jisu coordinated the systematic destruction of the alien advance force. Her tactical display showed alien ships trying desperately to retreat, but human forces had surrounded them completely. Broadcasting surrender terms, her communications officer reported, but many alien ships were too proud or too shocked to surrender. They continued fighting even as their weapons proved useless against human technology. Dark matter shields deflected every shot while human weapons continued to tear through alien hulls. Within 3 hours, the battle for Sol system was over. Of the 50,000 ships that had attacked, less than 5,000 remained. Most had been destroyed, but some had been allowed to escape, carrying word of humanity's true power back to their leaders. The surviving aliens found themselves prisoners on vessels that defied everything they knew about physics. Human soldiers moved through the corridors of captured ships like ghosts, their armor allowing them to phase through walls and appear anywhere they chose. Fleet Commander Yin Taik was brought before Admiral Park Junho in chains. The human admiral was younger than Yin Taik had expected, with kind eyes that seemed completely at odds with the destruction he had just unleashed. "Why?" Yin Taik asked. "If you had this power all along, why hide it? Why let us think you were weak?" Park Junho looked out at the stars through the viewing port of his ship. "Because we remember what it was like to be young and afraid. We hoped that showing restraint might teach you to do the same. We were wrong." The admiral turned back to his prisoner. "The council ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Look where it led: stagnation, war, and nearly the destruction of 47 civilizations. We offered you a chance to evolve beyond that. Instead, you chose to threaten us." As Park Junho spoke, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. Human fleets were systematically dismantling every council military installation. Ancient strongholds that had stood for millennia were falling within hours. The revelation was complete. Humanity was not a young species reaching for the stars. They were the apex predators of the galaxy, and they had been watching from the shadows for longer than most civilizations had existed. The Council's war was over before it had truly begun. The destruction of the alien fleet at Sol was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, human forces that had been hiding for millennia suddenly revealed themselves. What the Council had thought was a war against a small, weak species became a nightmare that spread to every corner of their territory. Admiral Park Junho stood in the command center of his flagship, watching tactical displays that showed battles raging across dozens of star systems. His ghost fleet had moved beyond Earth's solar system, and was now systematically destroying every major council military base. Report from Captain Kim So-man, his communications officer, announced. The assault on Kepler Station has begun. Kepler Station was the Council's primary military stronghold, built inside a massive asteroid in the Vega system. For 2,000 years, it had been considered unbreakable. Its shields could withstand the explosion of an entire star. Its weapons could destroy entire fleets from light years away. Captain Kim So-man commanded a fleet of human dreadnoughts that emerged from folded space like nightmares made real. Each ship was over 10 kilometers long, with hulls that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved through space like living shadows, completely invisible to normal sensors. "All ships, this is So-man," she broadcast to her fleet. "Begin Phase 1. Let them see what they're facing." The human ships decloaked simultaneously around Kepler Station. The aliens manning the station's defenses stared in shock at vessels that shouldn't exist. The largest human dreadnought was bigger than the entire station. "Impossible," whispered the station commander, an ancient being called Nexus, who had led the defense of Kepler for 3 centuries. "Our sensors showed empty space just moments ago." His tactical officer, a species known for their advanced technology, ran desperate scans. "Sir, these ships are using space-time manipulation. They're bending reality around themselves. Our weapons can't even lock onto them properly." Kim So-man opened a communication channel to the station. Her voice was calm but carried a promise of absolute destruction. "Kepler Station, this is Captain Kim So-man of the Human Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why the Council should have left humanity alone." Nexus was a proud being who had never retreated from any battle. His species, the Eternal, believed that showing weakness was worse than death. "Human vessel, we have defended this station against the greatest armies in the galaxy. Your threats mean nothing to us." Kim So-man checked her chronometer. 29, 28, 27. "All weapon systems prepare to fire," Nexus ordered. "Show these primitives the power of a real military installation." Kepler Station's massive guns swiveled toward the human fleet. Energy began to build in weapons that could crack the crust of a planet. When they fired, the beams were so powerful they lit up the entire system like a second sun. The energy blasts passed harmlessly through the human ships as if they weren't there. Impossible, Nexus screamed. Our weapons passed right through them. Kim So-man's countdown reached 0. Time's up. The human response was swift and absolute. Dark matter cannons fired from every ship in the fleet. The beams didn't just destroy Kepler Station, they erased it from existence. The massive asteroid that had housed the base simply stopped being there, leaving only empty space where the most powerful fortress in the galaxy had stood moments before. 47 seconds, Kim So-man said into her communicator, broadcasting on all frequencies so every council ship could hear. Kepler Station lasted exactly 47 seconds. 1 second for each species that thought they could threaten humanity. The symbolic destruction was not lost on the surviving council forces. Their most powerful stronghold had been eliminated faster than most battles lasted. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human forces revealed the true extent of their power. Chief Engineer Choi Mina coordinated the systematic shutdown of the entire Galactic Hyperlane network from her position aboard the Mobile Command Platform Busan's Fury. All major hyperspace routes are now under our control, she reported to General Lee Kyung. Council. Fleets are trapped in their home systems while our ships can move freely. This was another demonstration of human, technological superiority. While other species needed the ancient hyperlane network to travel between stars, humanity had developed their own methods. They could fold space open dimensional gateways and travel through what other species thought was empty void. On the Council's capital station, Nexus Prime, panic had replaced the confidence of just days before. Councillor Thexan of the brutal species rallied his warriors for what he knew would be a final battle. We are the oldest military force in the galaxy, he roared to his troops. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We will not bow to these upstart mammals. His warriors cheered, but their confidence was shaken. Reports were coming in from across brutal space. Human fleets were appearing everywhere, destroying bases that had stood since before recorded history. Thexan's bravado lasted until Commander Oh Dae-hyun's stealth frigates materialized inside Nexus Prime's hangar bays. The human ships had somehow passed through the station's shields without triggering any alarms. The boarding action that followed was swift and decisive. Human soldiers moved through the corridors like ghosts. Their powered armor allowed them to phase through walls, become invisible, and survive in environments that would kill unprotected beings. Thexan led his personal guard in a charge against the human invaders. His warriors were 3 meters tall, armed with weapons that could cut through starship hulls. They had never lost a ground battle in their entire military history. The fight lasted less than 10 minutes. Human soldiers didn't just outfight the aliens, they moved in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. They appeared and disappeared at will. Their weapons fired beams that passed through armor as if it wasn't there. Within minutes, every brutal warrior lay unconscious or dead. Thexan found himself on his knees before Commander Oh Dae-hyun, in the very throne room where he had ruled his species for 2 centuries. The human removed his helmet, revealing a face that seemed almost familiar. How? Thexan whispered. We are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. How did you defeat us so easily? Oh Dae-hyun looked down at the defeated alien with something that might have been pity. Because you've been fighting children's games while we've been preparing for real war. Your species considers itself ancient, but humanity has been fighting battles in the deep dark for 50 times longer than your civilization has existed. The final revelation came as Dr. Park Hana took control of the Council's communication networks. Her message reached every world in the galaxy simultaneously. Citizens of the galaxy, her voice carried across space, your leaders lied to you. They told you humanity was young and primitive. The truth is that Earth is not our homeworld, it is our forward operating base. We have been traveling between galaxies for over 50,000 years. She paused to let that sink in before continuing. The Council ruled through fear and intimidation. They conquered weaker species and enslaved entire populations. We allowed this because we hoped they might eventually learn to evolve beyond their primitive nature. They chose war instead. The broadcasts continued as human forces completed their conquest of Council space. In just 6 days, a galactic empire that had stood for 3 millennia was completely destroyed. The aliens who had thought they were the masters of the universe found themselves at the mercy of beings they had considered primitive. But humanity's mercy was not what the Council expected. Instead of enslaving or destroying the defeated aliens, Human forces began immediate reconstruction efforts. Damaged worlds were repaired using technology that seemed like magic. Populations that had suffered under council rule found themselves free for the first time in generations. The war was over, but for humanity, the real work was just beginning. They had revealed themselves to save the galaxy from its own leaders. Now they had to teach 47 species how to live without fear. 6 days. That was how long it took humanity to end a galactic empire that had ruled for 3,000 years. Admiral Kang Wu stood in the same chamber where the Council had declared war on his species less than a month ago. But now everything had changed. The great assembly hall of Nexus Prime was quiet. Where once 47 species had sat in positions of power, now only a handful of aliens remained. These were the leaders who had surrendered quickly enough to avoid complete destruction. They sat in simple chairs, no longer on the elevated platforms that had once shown their authority. The survivors included Veltar, the crystal being who had led the council. His once bright form was now dull, the light inside him dimmed by defeat. Beside him sat Kelmar, the tentacled science officer, who had served Fleet Commander Yin Taik. A few other aliens who had shown wisdom during the brief war were allowed to witness what came. Next, General Li Qiang emerged from the transport that had brought him from Earth. He had spent the war directing operations from his underground bunker. Now he came to oversee the formal end of the old order. The Galactic Council is hereby dissolved, he announced. Its laws are void. Its territories are now under the protection of the human Galactic Protectorate. But humanity's victory was not built on fear and destruction alone. Chief Engineer Choi Mina led teams of human technicians across the former Council space. They brought with them technology that seemed impossible to the aliens. On the world of Ketra Prime, where the population had been slowly dying from industrial pollution, human ships arrived within hours of the planet's surrender. The technology they deployed cleaned the atmosphere in days and restored the damaged ecosystem in weeks. How is this possible? Asked Elder Sim, leader of the Ketran people. His species had spent centuries trying to repair their world without success. The human engineer in charge of the restoration smiled. Your technology fights against nature. Ours works with it. We've learned to encourage natural healing rather than force artificial solutions. Similar scenes played out across dozens of worlds. Species that had struggled with energy shortages found their problems solved overnight. Planets that had been strip-mined for resources discovered new techniques that could restore even the most damaged environments. Captain Han Jisoo, now promoted to Admiral, oversaw the integration of former Council fleets. The aliens who proved their loyalty were offered something unprecedented: partnership instead of servitude. Admiral, said Kelmar, who now served aboard the Soul's Fire. May I ask you something? Of course, Han Jisoo replied from her captain's chair. Your people could have destroyed us all. Instead, you're helping us rebuild. Why? Han Jisoo looked out at the stars through the bridge viewport. Because destruction is easy, Kelmar. Any species can learn to destroy. Building something better takes wisdom. She turned to face her new alien crew member. The Council ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Look what it accomplished: endless wars, suffering populations, and technologies that barely advanced beyond what your ancestors achieved millennia ago. The ship's science officer, a former Council technician, looked up from his instruments. Admiral, what do you mean by barely advanced? Our technology was the most sophisticated in the galaxy. Was it? Han Jisoo asked gently. Your ship still used energy shields that could be disrupted. Your weapons still relied on brute force instead of elegant solutions. Your fastest travel still depended on ancient hyperspace lanes built by species you'd forgotten. She gestured to the bridge around them. This ship can fold space to travel instantly between galaxies. It can phase in and out of dimensions you don't have names for. It can manipulate time itself. That's what happens when science is guided by curiosity instead of conquest. Dr. Park Hana established the new government from Earth. The human Galactic Protectorate offered citizenship to any species willing to embrace cooperation over competition. Many aliens were skeptical at first, but the benefits became obvious quickly. The hegemony species, led by the former Fleet Commander Yin Taik, became one of the first to fully join the Protectorate. Their advanced mathematics combined with human technology led to breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. I spent my entire career believing that military might was the highest achievement of civilization, Yintaik said during a joint research session. Now I understand that true strength comes from lifting others up, not holding them down. But not all the news was about reconstruction and cooperation. Admiral Park Jun-ho commanded the deep space expeditions that pushed beyond the galaxy's edge. His ships carried instruments that could detect threats from unimaginable distances. General Lee, he reported during one of their secure communications, the deep space arrays are picking up movement in the void between galaxies. Something massive is approaching from the direction of Andromeda. Lee, Kyung studied the data from his command center on Earth, the O. Readings showed objects moving through space that were larger than solar systems. How long until they arrive? At current speed, approximately 500 years, Park Jun-ho replied. But sir, there are patterns in their movement that suggest intelligence. These aren't natural objects. This was why humanity had revealed itself. The Council had been so focused on their petty wars and territorial disputes that they had ignored the real threats lurking in the cosmic dark. Entities that consumed entire galaxies were moving through the universe, and the galaxy's previous leaders had been completely unaware. In a private meeting room aboard Nexus Prime, Admiral Kang Woo sat across from Veltar. The crystal being who had once led the Council looked broken, his form barely holding together. Why spare us? Veltar asked. Your people could have eliminated every species that opposed you. Why show mercy to those who declared war on you? Kang Woo poured tea from a simple ceramic pot. The human ritual had begun to spread throughout the former Council space as species learned to appreciate moments of peace. Because we remember what it was like to be young and afraid, he said. Long ago, humanity faced the same choice your species faced. We could rule through fear, or we could grow beyond the need to rule at all. He offered tea to the alien leader. The Council made the mistake of thinking that being the strongest meant you had to dominate everyone else. True strength is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. But the threats you spoke of, Veltar said, accepting the cup with trembling crystal fingers. These entities from beyond the galaxy, are they real? Kang Woo's expression grew serious. More real than you can imagine. The Council thought 47 species was an impressive alliance. We know of entities that have consumed thousands of galaxies. They move through the universe like locusts, devouring everything in their path. The truth was finally revealed. Earth was not humanity's homeworld. It was a fortress built to guard against threats that most species couldn't even comprehend. The moon that orbited Earth opened like a flower, revealing shipyards that had been building defenses for 50,000 years. This is why we hid, Kang Woo explained. We hoped that by staying in the shadows we could guide younger species toward cooperation, instead of conflict. We wanted you to be ready when the real enemies arrived. He looked out at the stars through the station's viewing port. The Council's greatest tragedy is that they had the potential to be our partners in this fight. Instead, they chose to be obstacles. As the meeting ended, Veltar asked one final question. What happens now? What becomes of those of us who survive? Kang Woo smiled with genuine warmth. You learn, you grow. You become part of something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The universe is vast and dangerous, Veltar, but it's also full of wonders beyond imagination. He stood and walked to the viewing port. Your species will see things that no Council member ever dreamed of. You'll help build technologies that can reshape reality itself. You'll stand guard against threats that would consume entire galactic clusters. And if we refuse? Veltar asked. Then you'll live peacefully under our protection until you're ready to choose differently, Kang Woo replied. We don't force cooperation. We simply make it so attractive that refusal becomes meaningless. As the former Council leader left the room, he passed a viewing screen showing the current state of the galaxy. Human ships moved through space like points of light, carrying aid to damaged worlds and knowledge to species that had been held back by the Council's authoritarian rule. The galaxy had a new order now, one based on growth instead of control, cooperation instead of conquest, and protection instead of exploitation. But in the deep dark between galaxies, ancient threats stirred. The real test of humanity's leadership was yet to come. The Council had learned too late what mercy looked like. For the sake of the galaxy, humanity could only hope that lesson would be enough when the true darkness arrived.